Welcome to Activate Your Introvert, the weekly radio show to uncover and unlock the entrepreneurial skills in your business. In this week's show, Introvert Myth of the Week. Extroverts are happier. Tip of the week, now is the time for team building. And finally, a discussion with Marianne Hewitt about mental health and compassion. Marianne has a professional background in HR. Now she's a coach and trainer specialising in mental health first aid training and self-compassion. Just before speaking to Marianne though, a quick advert. From April the 12th to the 16th, join me and 9 other thought leaders exploring how to improve people's performance. Tickets to this 5-day summit are free. You can get more information at introvertinbusiness.co.uk/performance-through-people. Each of the presentations will be concentrating on a different element of how to get more from your team, especially the quieter members. Now, this week's thought for leadership. It's time for team building. Let's be honest, the last year has been, at best, hard going, and maybe far worse for many teams. I don't know about your team, but I suspect things are about to change again, as they move from being mainly working at home to the office or even hybrid working, which they might not have even done before. That makes now a great time to concentrate on the team. You probably already know that I have a problem with many team building activities, as do many introverts. The idea of taking a day or two out to play some silly games for real or on Zoom without good reason will bring out the cynic in many team members. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't focus your team on each other's strengths, working together, and the challenges your business is facing at the moment. The cultural web is a great model for culture within a team or a business. It looks at the effectiveness of how organisations work and deal with issues. In many businesses, some of these have been strongly affected by recent changes to working patterns, such as organisation structures, rituals and routines, the power structure, and the stories and the myths that people tell each other in the business. And that's 4 out of 6 elements of culture working against you. Hence why I say it's now an important time to bring teams together, reintegrate colleagues, deal with underlying fears and team morale. And 2 quick thoughts. Number 1, team working. It's natural for team members to talk to each other about what's going on, behind your back possibly. If the answers are negative, this becomes the general story and builds a destructive culture. Getting teams to focus on the strengths of the individuals, how they can work together, creating new stories and myths and rituals and routines can help create a more useful culture and increase team effectiveness. Some more focus on joint problem solving and strengths can help this. Number 2, getting to know each other. Well-balanced teams don't just know each other's work skills. Very good teams know something about each other in a non-work sense. It's easy to build in very small splashes of this into weekly meetings and team events. So think more about team building, but without team building that turns off a third of your team or more. Do let me know what tip you'd like to help you activate the entrepreneurial skills in your business, or what introvert myth you'd like exposed. Drop me an email, give me a call, and certainly add it as a comment to your review on the iTunes store. I would love to hear from you. But now it's time to talk to Marianne. Welcome, Marianne.
Thank you.
Just before we dive into the whole self-compassion, mental health first aid issue, I'd love to know, are you an introvert or an extrovert? And possibly more importantly, what does it mean for you?
I would classify myself as an introvert, and that doesn't mean that when I'm training or coaching, I'm not, I can't be confident and comfortable being out there talking to people, and I'm certainly that person in the moment. what it means to me is actually how I recharge. So I will recharge on my own, and I love being with people, but actually then there gets a point when I want to be on my own.
No, that's brilliant. Thank you. And so how does it feel when you spend a lot of time with a large group of people back in the days when we could do that?
Yeah, remembering those times. I love it at the time, and then I find I get to a point when actually I've kind of just run out of resource.
Yeah, I can certainly empathise with that one, as I do much the same. So what is self-compassion?
I like to think of it at a very simplistic level about as the difference between living with an internal narrative that's a harsh critic and one that's a kind and supportive friend. It's about treating ourselves with the same kindness and care that we show to other people. If I was to notice some of the things that I hear telling myself and how I articulate things to myself when I haven't done as much or as well as I would like to have done, I'd never dream of speaking to somebody else like that.
I guess we all have that little voice in our head sometimes that, as you say, talks to us far differently to the way we talk to other people. So is self-compassion about teaching that other voice to work differently, or is it something else?
There are skills that can very much train that voice, if you think of it that way, but it's about really understanding what self-compassion is. I mean, there's been a huge increase in research and interest in it in the last 20 years, I guess. And if you, I did a search on Google Scholar the other day for something else I was doing, and that now brought up 38,000 entries. So there's certainly a lot of interest in it. And it actually entails being kind and understanding towards ourselves when in instances of pain and failure, rather than being harshly self-critical. I think this is drawing on the work of Christian Neff, who's certainly the leader in it. It's about how we perceive our experiences as part of a larger human experience, rather than seeing them as isolating and only ourselves that are experiencing that. And it's about how we hold painful thoughts and feelings in a kind of a mindful awareness, rather than over-identifying with them and just getting so wrapped up in them.
A couple of minutes ago, you said that over the last 20 years, more people have become aware of it. Is there a reason for it kind of rising up the charts, as it were?
I'm not sure. I don't know if it's linked. I mean, the whole science of positive psychology was pretty much born in about 2004, I think it was, is when it was first started talking about. And that's sort of the science of making life better. And I would view self-compassion as a construct within that, because if we look at building our self-compassion and we are more compassionate towards ourselves, there's so much evidence now that shows the impact it has on our well-being and satisfaction with life.
So self-compassion then, very important. What's misunderstood about it then?
I think it is thought to be something that we are letting ourselves off the hook for. If we're too kind to ourselves, we won't make ourselves get on with things. It can feel self-indulgent. What's interesting is actually, if we look at the research around self-compassion, there's those that have high levels of self-compassion actually have high levels of health-promoting behaviours like healthier diets, regular exercise, better sleep, because they're caring for themselves and valuing themselves. And actually, it's also had findings around, higher achievement, achieving mastery goals, optimism, motivation, but it comes from a place of recognizing our value and kindness and self-worth, not from a place of not feeling good enough and beating ourselves up.
Okay, so it's going to help us to boost our own performance as a person and at work if we are more compassionate with ourselves.
Yeah.
Do introverts need to practice it differently? Do they suffer more or less?
I don't think there is any difference haven't seen any research in relation to introverts, extroverts, and any correlation with levels of self-compassion. But if we look at the different factors or the components around it, it's about self-kindness versus self-judgment. It's about the common humanity against feeling isolated and the mindfulness against over-identification. So I think where it might be, there is sort of some correlation, is that being self-compassionate can be viewed as being a lesser strength, as in the same way that introvert as a characteristic can be viewed as being a lesser strength than being an extrovert, whereas actually we know that's not true. We are all of equal value.
So the two aren't directly linked, but potentially if introverts are, I guess by definition, slightly more reflective, that could work in their favour or against.
It could work in their favour in terms of practicing it. in terms of developing great skills.
Yeah, because sometimes I hear that introversion gets viewed as a negative trait. Don't know what your views on that are.
I'm not sure whether I'd go so far as negative. I think it's considered that there can be drawbacks from it in some situations, because some of the characteristics of extroversion in wider society seem to be ones that are valued. So, but I don't know that's necessarily the same as thinking that being an introvert is a weakness.
I'm with you. I see lots of strengths in introversion and extroversion. They are just very different. And it's a question of how we better marshal our strengths in the world in which we're living. And if we're living in a world which might be extroverted, have an extrovert bias, then we need to marshal as an introvert our strengths to deal with.
And I think if we're coming, which is where self-compassion is so linked to it, if we are coming from a place of value and self-worth, actually we like ourselves, we're kind to ourselves, we accept ourselves as we are. And that's wherever you are on that scale of introversion or extroversion. As
you said that, I'm going without becoming narcissistic, I guess.
And that's where there is a link where self-compassion, which is a whole other conversation, is different from self-esteem. So self-esteem tends to come from the need to feel better. We get our validation from feeling better than other people, whereas self-compassion is about recognizing our worth as we are. So self-compassion has the benefits of self-esteem, but without drawback.
Oh, I love that distinction. Thank you, Marion. Just really quickly, I know you have an HR background, and we have many HR managers and directors that listen. What do you think is the most important role of an HR manager, if you could pick one?
I think that is a huge question. I mean, I describe myself as an HR advocate. I believe that the HR profession can have a huge value. I'm not sure I can actually pick one thing. I think it is about making sure that the people agenda is central and key part of all business strategy. And there is not a business that works without people. So we have to make sure that the HR, the people strategy, is central to an organisation.
I always ask my guests for a tip for an introvert in your area of self-compassion.
Accepting that that's who you are, and that's fine, because we are of value as we are.
If I was a non-introvert, perhaps who's managing introverts, a tip for me to help me get more from the introverts in my team?
I think that is aligned with all management and leadership skills. It is about the communication. It's about understanding individual strength. And a thing that I think I use a lot, everybody has their own unique view of the world, actually recognising their perspective and understanding where they're coming from. And you get that by talking to them and learning about them.
Fabulous. Thank you. Marion, I've really enjoyed the conversation. If some of the listeners want to get back in touch with you, what's the best way to do that?
You can find me on LinkedIn, or you can contact me via my website. So my company is Protea Solutions. So the website is proteasolutions.co.uk.
Thank you so much for your time today. Really enjoyed it.
It's a good conversation. I've enjoyed it too. Thank you very much.
And now it's time for Introvert Myth of the Week. Those crazy stories that I hear and you hear, but some people actually believe. Extroverts are happier than introverts. I'd immediately put this one in the bin, although, from many years of personal history, I accept that extroverts may show happiness more than introverts. I can't count the number of times I've been asked if I'm okay, when I'm actually pretty damn happy, but I might not be jumping up and down and smiling like a monkey in a banana factory. However, there's a study reported by the British Psychological Society from Orleans and Bakker that might interest me and persuade me. A finding in the study showed broad pattern. However, there's a study reported by the British Psychological Society by Orleans and Bakker that might persuade me otherwise. One finding in the study showed a broad pattern that extroverts experience more happiness during rewarding activities, but not pleasurable activities. That's sports or exercise versus TV or music to you and me. Another strand to this study was that it found extroverts experience a bigger happiness boost than introverts when they perform rewarding activities with other people rather than alone. The results show that extroverts spend more time on rewarding activities than introverts do, and they tend to have more social contact during their daily activities. Concluding that extroverts, because of their active nature, are more likely to seek and spend more time on rewarding activities, the researchers said, when they do, they also experience a higher boost in momentary happiness as compared to their introverted counterparts. And that may partly explain the relationship between extroversion and momentary happiness. Does that mean introverts don't look for happiness, as they don't report it as much? I would love to hear your views. Please drop me an email.
Thank you for listening to Activate Your Introvert, and I hope you've enjoyed this week's episode. I'd love to see your reviews on the iTunes store. Thank you once again, and catch up with you next week.